Hey, learning nerds, before we begin today's show, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this podcast, Idle Courses Academy. If you're looking to transition into the corporate instructional design space, you need the right guidance to do so. Dr. Sargent and her team have done an incredible job of focusing on what's important to be a corporate instructional designer, like storyboarding, ID models and theories, authoring tools, project management tactics, and more. They even cover how to make your resume and portfolio stand out from the crowd and have an impressive completion rate with their students working at organizations like Google, Salesforce, GM, Uber, Walmart, and Amazon. Also, you won't be going through this entire learning journey alone. You'll be studying alongside other aspiring instructional designers, as well as working with experienced mentors and coaches. And as an added bonus, you'll get a discount on my ebook, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. So check out the industry-recognized program that's showing up in job descriptions as preferred training and education by going to idlecourses.com/academy. Enrollment is opening back up again in January, so be sure to use my promo code Luke to save $88 off your enrollment. And now, let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you are going to hear this year, because 2023 is literally just around the corner. So get ready for a lot of terrible jokes and bad puns, because this episode, it's going to be a fun one. And of course, if this is the first time you're listening to this show, well, welcome on in. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I am your certified learning nerd and, of course, the host of this show. I'm a senior instructional designer over at MIT X-Pro. I'm also an author and really just an overall learning nerd who loves instructional design. And of course, you can find all my information over at drlukehobson.com. Now, somehow, some way, it's already time to do the end of the year wrap-up, which has somehow become a somewhat of an annual tradition, where at the end of the year, I like to do a review of every piece of content I've produced and see what you've enjoyed the most. I rank all of these pieces of content based on downloads, views, comments, shares, and other metrics like that. And speaking of all of these stats, by the way, once again, thank you so much for following along with this show and with all of the other Learning Nerd content. The podcast hit 40,000 downloads recently. The YouTube channel is at 70,000 views with 8,000 hours of watch time. My book recently passed the 2,000th order, and almost 200 of you have taken the course on collaborating and building relationships with subject matter experts over on EduFlow. None of this makes any sense to me whatsoever, but I deeply appreciate all of your support and for coming on this absolutely wild ride with me as we go through this instructional design journey together. And of course, I have no plans on slowing down. To give you a bit of an update about some newer things, the audiobook version of What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer has been submitted to Amazon for review, and I'm anxiously waiting to see if everything has passed. I found out, of course, after I submit things, that it takes 10 business days to go through, and I submitted the files right before the holidays, so I'm just going to assume it's going to take a while, and New Year is just around the corner too, so it's taking a bit there. So I'm kind of waiting on that one. As soon as I, of course, have more information for you, I will absolutely let you know. I also have two massive pieces of news that I am sitting on, and most likely I am not going to be sharing them until 2023. It is definitely eating away at me to not be able to share these pieces of news with all of you, but it is safe to say that I am not slowing down. If anything, I'm probably ramping up for more madness, so please continue to follow along with this crazy ride that we are going to be going down together. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about 2022. There were so many blog posts, podcast episodes, YouTube videos, and even YouTube shorts that I started to dabble on into, and all of those pieces of content came out. But from reviewing all of those metrics I previously talked about, 5 of them made the cut. 5 of them really stuck out to you that you absolutely enjoyed more than all of the other pieces of content. So what we are going to do for this episode is that I'll give you a quick summary of what the actual episode was, I'm then going to play a quick clip from the episode, usually around the 10-minute-ish mark or so, and that way you can hear more about that episode. And obviously, if you want to go back and listen to the full one, I'm going to include all of the links into the show notes down below. And we're just going to work our way, starting with the 5th most downloaded episode, and then I'm going to leave you in suspense as we get all the way until the number 1 most downloaded episode of 2022. And at the end, I'm going to share a quick few honorable mentions about some of those that just didn't make the cut, but man, they were so close. They were almost right there. So this is going to be fun of just you and I hanging out right before the actual new year kicks off. So let's do this. Here is the 5th most downloaded episode of 2022, which is the pros and cons of instructional design. I really enjoyed making this one, and you can actually tell because I greatly expanded upon this actual episode, which was just what are the pros and cons of instructional design, and it became a 3-part YouTube series where I really wanted to unpack and break down for you just what exactly are the pros, the cons, and then this gray area that I'm calling the in-betweens about the entire job. And I think that is the biggest thing that I want you to be able to take away from what you are going to be hearing in a couple of seconds is that instructional design, it is a job. And with any other different kind of job, there are some not so fun moments. I obviously love what it is that I do, hence why you're listening to a podcast about instructional design. But of course, there are some not so great moments that are like, ugh, why aren't these talked about more? So that was the highlight of this, is that I wanted to be able to share with you something that I found very odd that I wish I knew about before coming over into this field. So let's dive on into the clip when talking about this topic. No one likes feeling stuck in the middle. Maybe you've encountered this before with 2 close friends arguing or trying to stop a lover's quarrel. Simply put, it's not fun, and it's a delicate process to make sure that both sides come to an agreement, and then you pray that this argument never comes up again. One part of my job that I was not prepared for was how many times I was going to be thrown into this type of a situation. As the instructional designer, you are the representative of the institution. You follow the organization's guidelines and policies and procedures. At the end of the day, you need to consider what's best for students and what's best for the organization. Now, imagine having 2 other parties both believing that they are doing what's right for the organization and don't want to back down. Who is going to facilitate this conversation to make both parties see one another's view? Here's a hint, it could be you. I've found myself in these situations where my senior level leadership team had a disagreement with a professor or a dean or a SME or a vendor, and then I'm there to pick up the pieces and make them whole again. The tricky part of this situation is that both sides usually have the right idea in mind. They are doing what's best for the learning experience, in their opinion, and don't want to give in to the other side. This greatly depends upon your organization and the structure of your departments, but no matter the organization, I keep having these experiences happen. Let's say that you are developing a new business administration course. You are working with a professor as your SME who has taught this course for 20 years on campus. They have seen firsthand the benefits of using one particular simulation and feels that in order to achieve the same results as the in-person course, the new online course you are developing must have the same simulation. You tried out the simulation for yourself and concur that it would be a valuable tool for the students. After working with the vendor, they give you a price tag of around $50 per student, and the professor confirms that that price tag is reasonable. You bring this back to your supervisor, and they have several concerns about the price and mention that this would far exceed the budget. They ask if there's an alternative that's less expensive but still deliver the same learning experience. You then go back to your SME with this information, and they say no. It has to be this simulation, or else they don't want their name associated with the course. Is this an extreme circumstance? Yes. Did this actually happen to me in a similar situation? Yes, it did. I constantly talk about negotiating, persuading, influencing, and handling conflict because of these scenarios. In this case, both parties were doing what's right for the students with wanting the best simulation and wanting the most affordable price, but there had to be a compromise. And then finally comes this in-between section. And I'm just going to call this as "that's not in my job description." I would like to consider this last bullet point a pro, but I also could see how it could be perceived as a con. I'll let you decide though, as every instructional designer will tell you about this final bullet point. As you continue to grow in your career, more opportunities are going to present themselves. Sometimes these are obvious signs for you to take advantage of the opportunity as it closely relates to your work and passions. Other times, it's outside of your comfort zone, and you assume that there has to be someone else more fitting for the job. And then you realize you are technically the most qualified to handle the task. In order for instructional designers to make the career transition from instructional designer to senior instructional designer or manager, more responsibilities will be asked of you. If you are looking to advance to a more senior level role or leadership, it's a natural transition. It just makes sense. The con about all of this, though, is that it doesn't mean that anything comes off your plate. You just continue to stack more work on top of your existing duties. If you are working in academia, this sounds all too familiar. What's a nice change of pace, though, is being asked to conduct research, write a white paper on it, and having it to be reviewed for publication. This typically then is followed by presentations at conferences or be invited to speak at universities and other organizations. With every paper and presentation, you're building your brand and credibility. What about beyond this, though? And that's where things start to get interesting. When I first started working at MIT, I volunteered to run the webinars with our faculty. These webinars could be to support our learners or to talk to potential learners about our programs. Since I designed the courses with these faculty, it only made sense for me to host the webinars with them. What I wasn't expecting, though, was that after doing this for a bit, the marketing and the sales team asked if I would like to do more of these opportunities. And since I love public speaking and talking about nerdy content, I didn't think much of it until one day when I was doing a presentation for a massive organization and I had a bit of an identity crisis. Is it normal for an instructional designer to be like the demo guy for products? And the answer to that question is no, but my public speaking skills opened up more doors for me. And instead of just being behind a laptop screen, now I am doing more and more presentations and events and networking and everything else. This type of thing seems to keep on happening to me in my career. I'll mention an idea, I'll look around the room to see who's the best suited to do it, and sure enough, it ends up being me. Another time, I was preparing for a marketing webinar to talk about one of our new programs. The professor and I had done this webinar once before, and I was preparing for the same type of presentation. Unfortunately, something urgent popped up for him, and he couldn't make it. The backup person that I had in mind did not feel ready to handle this and asked to actually not host the event. After the team and I got together to figure out a plan C, the best option ended up being me, since I designed the program with the professor. It also helps that I love public speaking and talking to students, so I volunteered. A few days later, I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see a targeted ad of my face on it. And I was like, wait, what is this? And it was actually an advertisement for the marketing webinar. And wow, that was different. It was a really different feeling to have an advertisement with me on the front of it, that's never actually happened to me before. I was filled with excitement and anxiousness all in one swoop. I ended up really enjoying the webinar, and I offered to do these more, despite the fact that I knew that I really did not have the time to do these. My day-to-day was already bananas, but I really enjoyed doing it, and that's why I am putting this entire item into this type of in-between category. Your fourth most downloaded episode is Getting Instructional Design Experience Without the Job. Yes, the old adage of you need experience to get the job, but you need the job to get experience. So what is a person to do? It's a fantastic question, and luckily, it can be solved. I provide a few tips in this one about how to turn this lack of experience into an advantage, and really talking more about an entire group of people who are not reached out to enough about how to design courses and programs and trainings and workshops and all of these other things of that nature. And they are raring to go. They want to do this, but they need help. And this group is actually entrepreneurs, which I found to be very fascinating. And even true to my word, I am working with another group of entrepreneurs right now for a freelance project where we are designing and building out an entire type of learning experience for them. So it's just once again to be able to really say that if you are looking to become an instructional designer, I would highly encourage you to think about doing a bit of freelance work on the side at first when it comes to being able to work with entrepreneurs and helping them to develop their overall product. So let's go and dive right into the story, telling you more about how I figured this out and what exactly does this actually look like. Now, of course, I'm not just going to tell you to do these things without obviously myself doing them first. And sure enough, I have, which is why I'm telling you to do this and why I haven't really seen it online. I'm not sure if other people have actually done this before or if I'm just the weird one who likes talking with entrepreneurs. But this happened to me years ago, is that I was an avid podcast listener of one show in particular. I did not get their permission to talk about the show or drop names before making this video. So because of that, I'm just going to cover myself. I'm going to make it very general. So with that being said, I was an avid podcast listener of this one show that was talking all about personal development. I listened to it religiously. There was a new episode every single day. So therefore, I listened to this podcast host for every day for literally years. And I noticed that at the end of every single episode, he always said that if you enjoy this content, I have a free course that you can take at xyz.com, whatever. And I never signed up. Finally, whatever reason, after hearing it for 100 million times, I was like, hey, I should probably take this course. Sounds like something I would really enjoy. I should just sign up. So finally, I caved in. I took the course. And what I noticed was that the content was good inside of everything, but I wouldn't call it a course. I would say that it was much more like a private YouTube playlist because it was just videos, nothing else. So no activities, no assessments, no exercises, no nothing, just straight up videos. The only thing that I had though was that there was a way for you to put in a comment at the bottom. And what I noticed is that other people were commenting down below. And for one of the topics in particular, it was talking about personal development with networking. And a lot of people had comments on this one particular section just saying like, wow, I really wish I could hear from other people about what it is that they did after watching this video. You know, did it work? Do you have any success stories? Like, I just want to know what other people are doing. It was great to hear from you, said podcast host, but I'm not like you. I'm at the beginning stages. So it would be awesome just to hear a little bit more from other people. Now, I took the course and I finished it up and I did the things that he was asking me to do at the end of the video. There was always some action item to go and to take. And I would do that. And I noticed that sure enough, when it comes to networking, I actually did get a lot better. So I certainly appreciated that. But as I said, I kept on noticing those comments and it really started to make me think. And I was like, you know what? Could I reach out to him and just to say, hey, I absolutely love this course. I would love to work with you on it a little bit more. And maybe he'd say yes. So that is exactly what I did. I wrote to him in an email and I basically something along the lines of, hey, super awesome podcast host. I have been an avid fan and listener for years. I listen every single day. I just took your course. It was awesome. I learned so much. I noticed, though, that a couple of other people kept on mentioning comments down below about how they would love to see other examples and different types of things. And this actually got me thinking, and why I'm reaching out to you. I'm an instructional designer, which means that I could work with somebody like yourself to be able to create an online learning experience that people are truly going to enjoy. And I have a couple of ideas based upon what people said. I would love a chance to be able to talk with you a bit more about these and see if you would like to be able to collaborate together. If you do, please let me know. If not, no worries. Thank you so much. Signed, Luke. End of the email right there. A week went by. And then to my surprise, sure enough, I got an email in my inbox from him and my jaw hit the floor. It was really weird because I've been listening to him for years and I never once made contact with him, which is kind of strange, but you know what? That is the way that the internet is nowadays. And then sure enough, I read his email and he said, "Hey, Luke, it would actually be great to do this. I noticed the exact same comments and I'm not entirely too sure what it is that I can do. I would love your expertise to be able to figure out how I can make this better. But next time, let's set up a time to talk and we'll go from there." Could not believe that. It's like, oh my God, let's go. I am ready. Let's do this. And sure enough, we started to work together. And it was so interesting because it actually tested my skill set with how I was going to be explaining things as an instructional designer. So to give you an example, with one of the parts of the networking section of that course, it said in there to be able to go and do a type of cold outreach to a former colleague or friend and basically check in with them, let them know that you're around and that if you can able to help them out within any way, shape, or form, let them know. It basically just going out and letting them know that like, hey, it'd be great to catch up with you. If there's anything I can help you out within my own personal bubble, love to be able to see what I can do for you. Now, for me, this wasn't awkward because of the fact that I'm an extrovert. I have no problem with getting on the phone, calling a person and saying, "Hey, how's it going? It's been years. How you been? What is it that you do nowadays? Oh, you do things within the online world? I design online courses. Let's chat sometime." There you go. So that's kind of how it worked for me years ago when I did that. Obviously, nowadays, I would explain my role a little bit better, but that's what I said years ago. So for me, this was absolutely no problem. For other people, doing a type of a cold outreach via phone or email is terrifying. A lot of people hate the phone nowadays or just hate bothering people. So for them, I was thinking about it from the stances of all the learners within the course. And for those kind of interesting extroverts like myself, no problem. For other people, I bet that was a barrier. And I am confident in saying that they saw that activity or they heard about that activity via at the end of the video. And they're like, yeah, no way, done. I'm definitely not doing this. So my suggestion to him was to actually be able to have some form, some way to allow people to be able to practice this before doing it. So this could be something like writing out a script ahead of time about what you're going to say to this person on the phone and imagining how the conversation was going to go, or potentially drafting up an email. And it doesn't go anywhere. You're just literally making an email. And then once you are imagining yourself sending that email or making that phone call, how did it make you feel? Is there anything that potentially you thought about afterwards that might come up that you can figure out exactly how are you going to tackle this now before actually making that real phone call or sending over that real email? So I sent that over to him as a suggestion about making this type of practice activity and this type of reflection. And what he wrote back to me was this like, "Hey, Luke, so I'm not trying to argue, but doesn't it make a lot more sense to make people just go and do this in the real world? Why do they need to practice this? It seems really simple." And then that was my chance to be able to explain it in a different way and to also defend my reasoning for why I said what I said, which basically was this like, hey, I absolutely understand your point of view. I'm just like you. I'm also an extrovert. This is nothing to me. But for other different types of learners out here who are coming into this with a brand new set of eyes when it comes to networking, they've never done this before. I am confident in telling you that someone sees that activity and they quit your course, or they just skip it entirely and they just rush all the way until the end and they feel like it's not meant for them. So they disconnect. They're not going to resonate with the content. When I said that back to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's do it your way. I can see your point about that one. I know some introvert types of friends and I can actually see where it is you're coming from. So that, as an instructional designer, pushed my limits and allowed me to think about things a little bit differently. And then again, of course, from here on afterwards, if somebody asked me about a time that I worked with a subject matter expert, and if they were able to push back, what was my response? If that was something like an interview question, well, hey, I had this experience. I could tell this story, and I can let people know a little bit more about my world and how I actually solved this type of problem. Your third most popular episode of 2022 is my interview with Shreya Gupta. Shreya is a learning experience designer at Amazon, and this episode, which was so fantastic with this entire interview, was that we wanted to go and talk more about just what is LXD, because that's what you're probably hearing more about is LXD. You don't hear the full learning experience design title. So unpacking more about what that actually is, what it isn't, and of course, she is a designer for Amazon. So I was extremely curious of like, well, what is a day in the life like for someone who works at Amazon, which is one of the biggest organizations I can think of. And for many people, that is their goal. Their dream job is that they want to work at a company like Amazon. So what should they be preparing for? What should they do? What common questions perhaps might actually come about? So we talk more about design thinking. We talk about Addy. We talk about technology. We just talk about really everything just to hear more about what does someone with an LXD do at Amazon. So I'm not going to waste any time. Let's dive into a clip from that episode with the one and only Shreya Gupta. Let's think more about talking about the methods of learning experience design. Because we talked about design strategies, we talked a little bit about working with others as well. But is there a certain type of like tool that you absolutely love to use? I know you mentioned for a framework, you've talked about Addy a bit, but are there any other tools or frameworks that folks should be aware of if they're trying to think more about LXD?
Yeah, I think I can start off with talking about frameworks first. So, like I said, I'm a big advocate of Addy, but then Addy is something which really gives you a structure of doing things. It doesn't really tell you how to do it. And that is where this framework called design thinking is something that I really swear by. Design thinking has come to the fore, especially during the pandemic or online times now, because it's very important for us as designers to be able to empathize with our learners, right? And it's one thing to say that we do that already, and another thing to actually practice it while designing. So, if I talk a little bit in detail about Addy, first, it comprises five stages. So, we start off with an analysis wherein we're putting together the problem statement. We're talking about the requirement of creating a training in the first place, whether or not we need to create it, and understanding the success metrics, right? After that, we move to the design phase, wherein we create a storyboard, or really a structure of the visualization that we've done in terms of creating that content. Once that is signed off, we move to the actual development, wherein we use tools like a storyline, or could be something like a PowerPoint, depending on the modality that you've chosen for your curriculum. And once you've developed that, once everything has been signed off, you then move to launching it, which comes under the implementation phase. And finally, you have evaluation, something that I touched upon a bit initially. So, evaluation is where you're measuring how well your curriculum has performed in terms of hitting the right targets, right? And how well or not so well it has fared in terms of learners, right? How well it was received by the learners. And also trying to gauge how well your business objective has been achieved here. So that's a bit about Addy. Now, coming back to design thinking, that's a model which helps you, like I said, empathize with your learners first. So you're trying to understand the pain points of your learners. Now, you could do that using some kind of a survey. You send a survey to people right at the start to understand where they stand in terms of the learning. What is it that they're trying to achieve through this new training? Or you could have some kind of a focus group right at the start, right, where you are interviewing people who are supposed to be the audience of this new training. So you just try and understand what are they struggling with at the moment, which would then be taken care of by this new training that you designed for them. So once you have put all of that together, you move to defining the problem statement, What is it that you're trying to achieve? What is the business objective behind it? And by when should you be delivering it? All of those basic questions should be answered during this stage. Once you've defined that, you move to ideating phase, which means you're now thinking about possible solutions to the problem that you've identified. And then you move to the prototype stage. Prototype is nothing but similar to the design phase of ADDIE, I would say, wherein you're prototyping or putting together a structure of how you would want to roll out the training, what is it you want to design, the modality of your training, etc. And finally, you reach the testing phase of design thinking. Again, testing is something which could also mean a launch or a development, depending on the team you're on, depending on the way you want to achieve your objectives. So that's how design thinking model has been structured. And for me, I think I use both of these together in conjunction, and depending on the kind of project I'm on, I would like to use it differently each time. But then the whole idea behind using both of these is to make sure that we're walking into the shoes of the learners and making sure what we are doing is going to help them in the long run.
And I know I'm breaking habit here, but I also have to say one amazing thing about Shreya is that our time zone difference is huge because I'm in New England. She was over in India when we did the recording for that one. And I forget what time she stayed up to talking to me. It was something outrageous, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., that she stayed up to do the interview just for recording that, for trying to be able to balance out those time zones. And I didn't realize it until almost the end when I was realizing, like, wrapping up the show. And all of a sudden I was just like, wait a minute. I was like, what time is it? And I was like, oh my God, I never factored into the time zone when scheduling her interview. So anyway, once again, Shreya, if you're listening to this, you are awesome. So thankful you came on the show and that we were able to do this. Okay. Your second most popular episode is my 5 biggest mistakes as an instructional designer. Both the YouTube video of this and the podcast episode crushed it. And honestly, I think it's because of the amazing thumbnail where I'm giving you a thumbs up in front of everything going up in flames. But really, in actuality, why I think this did so well was because not a lot of folks talk about their screw-ups. It's embarrassing. It can bring up some not so great memories. It's kind of hard to be able to do. And in this episode, I was very transparent with you of just talking about how badly I messed things up when it came to my job. And even so much so that when I first became an instructional designer, I almost quit because I was screwing up left and right. And I was like, I am not getting the hang of this. Like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should think about something else. Luckily, everything did come together over time. And of course, every single time that I did make a mistake, I did not make it again. And I learned quite a bit from that. Hence why I wanted to be able to make some piece of content to share with you my embarrassing stories, just so that way you can learn about this and you don't need to actually make those exact same mistakes that I did. So let's dive into this clip. Mistake number 2 was not providing feedback. As you can tell from most of those stories I mentioned about before, I was met with a lot of resistance. They kind of crushed me at first, and eventually I stopped providing feedback because I'm like, well, you're the expert in teaching and learning as well, so you must be all set and I'll just kind of be here if you need me, was the attitude that I took early on. And then finally, I had a subject matter expert one time and we were filming for his new course. And as we were going into the studio, we already had everything outlined and talked about all of the bullet points that he wanted to mention, what he wanted to do, where he wanted to go, what was the vision for everything with the course and the recording and whatnot. So then we go into the multimedia studio and we start to record. And I notice that he has complete and total stage fright, if you will, as soon as you start to see the red light on the camera. He froze up. he began fumbling his words. He began to kind of not really be himself. And it was actually really weird. But the person who I knew talking with him face to face was not at all the same person that was coming across on the camera. And I felt really bad about that because, of course, the students weren't going to get the same experience that they would have if they had him in a face to face classroom because he was just so nervous of everything. And unfortunately for me, after every single video, he turned to me and said, "Hey, Luke, how was that?" And I was like, "Oh, you're doing good, doing great. Keep on going." And after the third or fourth video, he once again looked at me and he was just like, "So, how was that?" And I did my traditional thumbs up. I was like, "Oh, it was good." He's like, "Luke, that wasn't good." And I was like, "Oh no, what do you mean?" He's just like, I could do way better. He's like, "If you think that's good," he's like, "I have so much more potential. I could do so much better." And then that's when I started to open up because I saw an opportunity to fix my mistake and say, "Well, yeah, actually, in this video, you completely missed on this point that you said beforehand that you really wanted to hit home. And you fumbled over this word. You meant to say this word, and instead this other word came out." And all these different suggestions started to come out of my mouth. And before I know it, I was talking for 5 minutes about what I would do differently. I was like, "Uh-oh, I hope that wasn't too much information." Then he looked at me and he was just like, "Finally, that is what I've been wanting you to do this entire time. If I'm doing something right, then please tell me so I can do it more. If I'm doing something wrong, then also please correct me so I can improve during the next time around." And I will say thank God for this professor because he was who I needed at that moment of time to really be able to build up my self-esteem and my momentum and to keep on going. And after that, we had a fabulous working relationship where we basically did a gentleman's agreement to always make sure that we are telling the truth, that we are being straight shooters, and that we aren't going to fluff anything. If we can do something better, we can do it better. And that goes obviously not just for the recordings, but of course how we actually design the learning experience as well, and everything else that came along with it too. And that was something that still really did serve me, even to this day, is that now I am not afraid to give feedback and I will absolutely voice my opinion if I see an area for us to be able to grow together as a team. My next mistake was overthinking literally everything. When I say overthink literally everything, I mean it. I constantly was overthinking early on when I became an instructional designer. And so much so that I would literally fret over every single word choice that I made on a rubric. And I still remember this, that I actually had a conversation one day with my supervisor, and she was asking me why it was taking so long to create a rubric for an assignment. She's like, "This really should be taking you only like 30 minutes. Like, what are you doing?" And I really had this weird type of mind battle about trying to choose between two different words of identify and define. And I constantly went back and forth on them with the rubric of trying to figure out what is the most appropriate word to use that's going to match up for exactly how folks are actually being assessed when it came to the assignment itself. And this is how my brain actually worked, is that if I was going to be able to pick and choose the word identify and I actually mean to choose the word define, well, then what's going to happen is that students are actually going to be upset with everything. They're going to be so upset that they're going to fail. By failing, they're going to talk to their professor, and their professor is then going to come back to my department and say, "What did you do? Luke messed up this rubric. He needs to be fired and let go of," and all of a sudden I'm going to be out of a job. Yeah. So that is how my brain worked when I first became a designer, and not so much anymore. I realized after talking with my supervisor, she was just like, "No one is going to make this much of a big deal out of it as just you and I. Yes, we as instructional designers care. We're trying to choose the right word, but are students really going to call the professor and demand that you get fired for making the wrong rubric?" She's like, "No." It's like, "Oh, well, that's good because I don't know. Maybe they would. I don't have a clue." So luckily, we were able to overcome my overthinking. And afterwards, I realized that there was a time and a place to really dedicate a lot of my mental effort in trying to be able to improve and to create and to design. And other times, it's okay to let things go and to understand that simply I don't understand. And this is what led me to early on of being able to accept criticism and feedback from students. because I went through all of these different types of experiences, I recognize the fact that I am not the target audience for every single course and program and training workshop and whatever else I'm designing. I am always not going to be the target audience, which is going to mean that I can make my best educated assumption and guess about something, but until I really hear it from the students and from the subject matter experts and from other people who I'm collecting feedback from, I'm really not going to know. And that's what finally led me to being able to create pilot programs and actually crave student and learner feedback. I was like, I want to know if I can make it better. Please tell me my feelings aren't going to be hurt, because the next time around it's just going to get better and better and better. And every single time that I implemented new feedback into the design, it always got better ratings and rankings for every single time. So finally, my overthinking kind of actually became a superpower by putting it into a much better format for being able to think and to use everything effectively. And now, folks, your number one most popular episode by far is what I wish I knew before applying for instructional design jobs. I had a feeling most of you would like this one, but it went far beyond my expectations. In this video and in the podcast episode, I talked about ways to save you time in applying for jobs by discussing some strategies that absolutely helped me when I was searching for a job. Some of my strategies, I will admit, they are a bit unusual, or perhaps they're just not talked about enough, but I can promise you that any of these tips that I shared inside of this entire episode will certainly be able to help you out on your own instructional design journey. So let's get started and dive on into this one. Another day, another rejection email. Say goodbye to self-esteem and hello to more ice cream. I've been there. It's mentally exhausting. You check your inbox 73 times a day just to see if there's good news and keep on refreshing, despite the fact that you know it's not going to make a difference. It's not like you've minimized the inbox tab on Gmail, but you keep on checking your phone and thinking that somehow it's magically going to be faster than your browser. What's weird about this entire vicious cycle is the solution we tell ourselves is that you have to keep on applying to jobs again and again and again, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get lucky. Someone is bound to take a chance on me, you say. I won't deny that it's possible to land a job by constantly putting your nose to the grindstone and applying around, but I'd rather you create your own luck. I'd rather you feel that you have some sense of power and control in this entire job hunting process. Without a doubt, what I have seen and heard from talking with so many of you is that you don't feel like you have this sense of control. So, I have an idea. Let's take back control and get you on the right path to help you with applying for instructional design jobs. Whether you are transitioning into instructional design or you are an entry-level instructional designer looking for that promotion, here are my tips. Tip number 1, decide where you want to work and make a plan. Let's pretend that you aren't the one being interviewed. What if you were the interviewer? What would you look for in a company? I know that for most people, what comes to mind is a great salary and benefits. And sure, that's significant. But what about leadership, culture, flexibility, diversity, reskilling, and upskilling? What about an organization that values employees' ideas and respects them? Interesting thought. I know that for many of you, this is the first time you're going to be paid a real living. And I'm looking at you, my teacher friends, as I am saying these words. And I won't lie, being paid a fair amount for the hard work you put into the job is satisfying. It almost felt disingenuous to me to hear that my work was invaluable, but I was getting paid 40 grand a year. Being paid a reasonable amount will undoubtedly aid to your self-worth in a sense, and knowing that what you do is, in fact, appreciated. While that's all well and good, you won't stay at an organization if the leadership team and culture are abysmal. You need to find a place that's highly rated and will value you as a human being. If you get paid well, but the culture is to work 60 hours a week and answer questions on nights and weekends, you're buying a one-way ticket to burnout land. To counteract this, use Glassdoor. Glassdoor gives you the insider information on what an organization is really like by sharing reviews from interviewees, employees, and past employees. You can read the stories of real people about how they were treated and if they would recommend the same organization to a friend. This website actually saved me from making a grave mistake. Years ago, I noticed that one organization was hiring up a storm of IDs and senior IDs. I knew that the organization paid ridiculously well and that their benefits were comparable to where I worked at the time. I kept on reading the job postings over and over again. I was just trying to figure out, what am I missing here? What am I not seeing? And then it hit me. You know what? I'm going to go check Glassdoor. Sure enough, the organization was hiring a team of IDs to replace everyone that had recently quit. By going back through the review timeline on Glassdoor, I found the reviews and I saw them go from 5 stars to 1 star. And every employee, now past employee, were documenting the nightmare of the practices and policies of the new senior leadership team. You wouldn't find this kind of information anywhere. You have to go and get a direct connection to the company. And if you don't have that, well then, hence why you should be using Glassdoor. Once you have selected your chosen destination, you absolutely want to work for XYZ company, research what they're looking for in a stellar employee by checking out job postings and working your way backwards from there. Gather as much information as you can to make you feel more prepared for the next step in your job hunting process. And see how employees talk about the organization. Look for key terms. They're going to help you to talk shop to make you feel like you are one of the insiders. You can go on YouTube. You can actually search for videos like a day in the life of an employee at XYZ company. They all exist. I guarantee they pop up. I even made one for MIT. A day in the life of an instructional designer at MIT. We all have them. They all do exist, and you can find them for literally any major organization. What you're trying to do is you're trying to immerse yourself in the organization's culture and the values, and you're going to break down the barriers that make you feel like an outsider because now you're going to start to slowly understand some of the terminology, the jargon, the lingo, and everything else that comes with it. Also, if you don't know how to break down job postings, by the way, and find ways for you to connect with the responsibilities and the summaries and everything else, I recently did a presentation with TLDC for teachers transitioning over into the instructional design field. And you can find the whole thing for free by either clicking on the link in the blog or going down below in the show notes to see the video from there. Number 2, practice answering interview questions and record the process. In order to build your confidence and make you feel more comfortable during the interviews, this is my best piece of advice. With interviews comes this feeling of nervousness, and this is impartially to the fact that you don't know what kind of questions the interviewers are going to ask you. Well, you can make one gigantic step towards reducing this feeling by looking up past interview questions on, you guessed it, Glassdoor. Depending upon the size of the organization, you can narrow down these questions to the department, and it's quite surprising how much information is actually on there. Now, please don't assume that these will 100% be the questions you are going to be asked, because simply that is not reasonable. People come and go, questions change over time, so it's not going to be for sure 100% the same, but at least it's some good practice questions for you to try to be able to follow and gives you some type of ground for you to walk on. For instructional design positions, there are also a few common ones with talking about your design process, working with subject matter experts, or SMEs as we call them, handling difficult situations, and a few other different ones as well. You can actually see a list of common instructional design interview questions over on EduFlow. I'll put a link to that down there as well. So pick a few of them, write out a script for how you would answer them. Then put the question on the screen and using your notes, answer the question. Now, give yourself some time to let this information sink in, and then after a few days, try this practice activity again, but this time answer the question without any notes. Then, once again, give yourself a couple of days and do it again. What you are performing is based around the spacing effect. This is a technique that I used for defending my oral comps during my doctorate, and it was incredibly helpful. If you repeat this process, you are going to be absolutely astonished at the quantity of information that you can just retrieve by memory just by giving yourself some time in between each session and taking baby steps towards trying to be able to get better each time. From here, record yourself answering the questions. By seeing the red flashing lights and the word recording appearing on your screen, and you can use Zoom or whatever you want to use built out of your laptop or webcam or whatever you're using. By doing this and actually seeing the words recording, it is essentially simulating that experience of putting the pressure on you that, hey, this is actually going to be something that you're going to have one shot at, do your best, and see what happens. So it's trying to make you feel that same pressure of being put on the spot. Once again, this is all to build your confidence, though, and while it feels awkward at first, it's really going to help you in the long run. Afterwards, review the recordings and be honest with your performance. If you notice that you said some kind of pause filler words like, like, and things of that nature, well, be mindful of that the next time and try to reduce them. There are other mannerisms that you might notice from working at home over the years that somehow have just become a part of your normal habits, which is no fault of your own. Using Zoom every single day has certainly changed our behaviors and how we act on camera. To give you an example, I notice that when I'm on camera, I sway side to side when I'm standing. I have a standing desk. I never really noticed that I did this until I started watching some of my videos and was like, oh, yep, I do that a lot. It's not a deal breaker. Like, we're all human. We all do little tiny things like this. But it's just a good reminder that in a professional setting, if I was doing an interview, well, I'm certainly not going to be swaying side to side. I'm not going to be talking with my hands every 3 seconds. I'm going to try to be more professional in nature and just try to be more mindful of how I am answering the questions, but also how I am appearing on camera. And what you can do is just simply take notes on your mannerisms and then see if there's anything that you really should be more mindful of in the future, and then try to get better each time with not only your answers, but also with camera etiquette as well. Lastly, I would highly encourage you to practice speaking to visuals. The interview is the time to sell yourself and your skills. If you are applying for an instructional design role, chances are that you are going to be speaking to your portfolio, design process, or something else. In the before times, when seeing people in person was a normal thing, when I made it to a second round or a third round of the interview process, and yes, this is very, very normal, by the way, for instructional design roles. If you get offered and you see, but you have to go into another round, for whatever reason, it's a normal thing in our type of field. What I was asked to do was that for these, I was asked to give a presentation every single time. It was common for me to receive a poorly designed course and walk the interviewers through my steps of essentially how I would fix it and how I would make it better. I've also been asked to walk through a part of my portfolio. We've taken the interviewers through every single step from first actually coming up with the idea, doing the marketing testing, doing the research, figuring out the target audience, working with the SMEs, talking about the course outcomes, and literally going all the way through the process until we actually were able to have a finished, polished product. There were a few times when I was given a summary of a course with a description and really, really rough outcomes and the target audience. And then they basically said, like, hey, use your creativity. What would you do in this case? What would you suggest when working with the SME? How would you make this course come to life? And the point is, you're going to have to talk about a visual and walk these interviewers through the experience. If you become comfortable with sharing your screen and following through on these ideas, it's going to increase your chances tenfold. And also, if your area of the world is back to face-to-face activities, by the way, I would be ready to do this in front of a group of people, either with a projector or a whiteboard, or perhaps the organization has like an interactive screen or something else. All I'm saying is be ready to do a walkthrough with a visual in some capacity of the in-person kind. Well, folks, those are your top 5 episodes. Once again, you can listen to the full episodes with the links in the show notes by going down below, finding those. And of course, if you just head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever, you can find all of these different types of episodes. I did promise before that I wanted to talk about a few honorable mentions that didn't make the cut, but man, they were just so close. One of them was Christy Tucker's episode where we talked about everything freelance design. I basically just went through the gamut with her. I just asked her every common question that I keep on hearing about of folks thinking about becoming freelance instructional designers, and they want to know everything. So we went in and we unpacked every single thing I could think about as far as for if you want to start a freelance instructional design side project or a gig or a business or whatever. What are the steps you need to be able to take? What are the things you need to really be able to think about? And that episode was fantastic. Christy is extremely knowledgeable about all things instructional design. She's been doing this for years and years. So I am confident in saying that that episode will absolutely help you if you are thinking about dabbling in the freelance world. Another one was why the instructional design field is so confusing. I made that episode and that video based around the fact that I kept on reading and hearing and seeing more things that it just I don't know how to even describe it. It's like it just did not make sense because our field has grown over the last few years. The pandemic definitely boosted instructional design jobs and the need for designers. More and more things kept on going online. More people started to figure out what instructional designers actually do as far as for in-person opportunities and everything else of a sort. And it even has gotten to the point where every organization I could think about, from Apple to Google to Tesla to Twitter to even the Denver Broncos, have an instructional designer. So once you start going through and reading some of the job postings and reading some articles and blogs and everything to talk about within instructional design, some things just didn't make sense. Some things were blown out of proportion. Some things just were absolutely wild, where I'm looking at some stuff and I was like, that's not right. So I made that entire thing just to explain to you about if you have been feeling confused and going through job postings and seeing that everyone wants you to basically become this almighty superstar unicorn of the world where you're like, I don't get it. Am I missing something? And no, you're not missing something. It's just that our field has grown so much that it has become a bit chaotic and it's a little bit confusing. So hence trying to be able to share with you and some navigational tips about how to get through the instructional design field unscathed. And then the last honorable mention I'll have is kind of I don't know. It did not come out in 2022, so I feel kind of weird saying it, but it still keeps on getting viewed so much and downloaded so much. It's just mind-boggling, which is the video called What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. It was my first YouTube video. It is, for quality, I will say, from the filming, doesn't look so great. I'm in a dark room. I am wearing a jacket for some reason. I just did a presentation at a university, and it was literally that presentation itself was what I wish I knew before becoming an instructional designer. And the presentation went so well, I just had this idea of I should really record this and see what happens. It was done in one take. There's no editing. I'm talking to PowerPoint slides. You know, it's not the most thrilling thing, I guess I'll say, but the actual message about what I was trying to be able to communicate with you and share with you really resonated, and it seems to just keep on growing and helping people. And that video alone is up to like 21,000 views at this point, which is bonkers. It inspired me to write the book, of course, too, as the title sounds familiar. So anyway, that one still in 2022 keeps on getting viewed more than anything else I have produced so far. So it's an honorable mention. Didn't come out in 2022, but have to keep on saying it since you folks keep on watching it, which is awesome. I still can't believe 2022 is almost over. Makes no sense. Time just does not make sense anymore. Things are just flying by. But I will say, though, for our field and for instructional designers, it was an incredible year. So here is to you, here is to us, here is to our future. I hope you all have a happy and a safe new year. And real quick, I want to give a special thank you to our sponsors, Idle Courses Academy and EduFlow. They help me with keeping the lights on and for helping to support this independent podcast. I also have to give a quick and huge thank you to all of the guests who came on the show this last year: Dr. Indy Williams, Tim McKean, William Cranier, Christy Tucker, Shreya Gupta, Saide Mirza-E, Dr. Eric Stevens, Dr. Barbie Honeycutt, and Peter Shea. And once again, thank you, as in the person who was listening to this episode. Your support keeps me going. And honestly, I could not have done this without you and without all of the learning nerds who listen and follow this show and share these episodes and to tell other people about how they need to actually listen to the podcast or they have to watch my YouTube channel. I think that is honestly where most people find me nowadays, is honestly from wonderful people like yourself who share this all of this content with someone else, because I'll get a message from someone on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, Luke, I've never heard of you before, but I heard from so-and-so that if I'm going to become an instructional designer, I have to listen to your content. I have to watch your videos, or I had to buy your book to read it because my friend loved it so much." And I get a message like that at least once a week, which is just really, really super cool. So once again, I cannot thank all of you enough. And I will say the cliche thing of be sure to subscribe and follow along with all the nerdy content and with all of this news that I'm still just going to have to keep sitting on and waiting on until 2023, and it's going to slowly eat away to me. But it's fine, because eventually I'll be able to talk about some of these new projects. And hey, for the last time in 2022, stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next year.